I'm Jack. I'm 32 years old, and I guess you could say I've always been the easy kid. You know the type, quiet, reliable, never caused a scene, always made sure to pick up after himself, didn't ask for much, kept his grades up, got a job early, paid his way through college, and didn't complain when things weren't fair because what would be the point, right? That was me. Jack, the low-maintenance son. The one you could count on, but only when it was convenient. I used to think that was something to be proud of. Now I'm not so sure. I grew up in a pretty, picture-perfect family from the outside. 2 parents, 2 siblings, a well-manicured lawn, and matching Christmas pajamas every year for the annual photo that my mom would post with the caption, "Grateful beyond words, my mom." Sharon is the kind of woman who treats Instagram like a religion and appearances like gospel. My dad, Greg, mostly stayed out of the chaos, preferring his woodworking shed and ESPN to any real emotional involvement. He's the classic checked-out suburban dad, present but absent, if that makes sense. My older sister, Melanie, is 35 and has always been the center of attention. Blonde, bubbly, popular, the type to throw wine nights for her ladies and use phrases like, "I just feel like I'm vibing so hard this year." And then there's Ethan, my younger brother. He's 28, a bit of a golden boy in my mom's eyes, always making messes and getting praised for trying, even when he failed miserably. He bounced from job to job, hobby to hobby, and girlfriend to girlfriend, but Sharon always found a way to spin it as him finding himself. Meanwhile, I've been working quietly in the background for years, running a small but steadily growing tech consultancy that I built from scratch. I own my house outright. I pay my taxes. I don't throw tantrums or show up to family dinners drunk. You'd think that would count for something. But in my family? Not really. For as long as I can remember, Christmas has been Sharon's Olympics. She plans it with military precision starting in October, matching decor themes, color-coded gift wrap, themed menus, and of course, the great unwrapping, where each person opens their gifts one by one so Sharon can record our reactions. When we were kids, it was magical. When we were teens, it was tradition. As adults, it's more like a performative ritual where my mom plays director, audience, and star. And every year, I somehow manage to convince myself that this time will be different. That this time, she'll see me. Really see me. Not just as the reliable one or the quiet one, but as her son. As Jack. But Christmas of this past year, that was the year I finally snapped. It started like it always did. I arrived on the 23rd, just like I was asked. Not early, not late. Melanie was already there, lounging on the couch in a matching loungewear set, sipping something out of a glass that clinked with ice. She greeted me with an air kiss and a distracted, "Hey you," as if I was someone she vaguely remembered from high school. Ethan showed up an hour later with his latest girlfriend, a girl named Kelsey who wore oversized sunglasses indoors and spoke in TikTok catchphrases. Sharon had made up the guest rooms with monogrammed pillowcases for everyone but me. Mine just said guest. I noticed it right away but didn't say anything. I never do. Dinner was tense in the way that only family dinners can be. Melanie talked about her upcoming trip to Tulum with her influencer friends. Ethan bragged about some crypto thing he was about to get rich off of, and I just sat there, nodding occasionally, sipping my wine, wondering how I always managed to feel like a visitor in my own family. At one point, Sharon turned to me and said, "Jack, you're so quiet. You really need to put yourself out there more. Learn to shine." I gave a tight smile. "I run my own company, Mom." She waved it off like I'd just told her I learned how to fold a fitted sheet. "Oh sure, your little tech thing. But I mean something real." Melanie snorted into her wine glass. Ethan laughed too loud. I excused myself early that night. Christmas morning arrived with its usual fanfare. Sharon made her famous cinnamon rolls. The fireplace roared, the tree lights twinkled, and the presents were piled high in color-coded stacks with hand-lettered tags and bows big enough to double as headwear. We went through the usual motions, Sharon directing, us acting. Melanie went first. She unwrapped a designer handbag, a spa weekend voucher, and then the big gift, a trip to Paris. First class. 5-star hotel. "Because you've been so stressed lately," Sharon beamed. Melanie squealed and cried and hugged Mom like she'd just been handed a kidney. Then it was Ethan's turn. He got a Rolex. An actual Rolex. Sharon said, "I just felt like you needed something to remind you of your potential." Ethan, who has no job and once accidentally set his apartment on fire with a hot plate, grinned and slapped her a high five. Then it was my turn. I already knew not to expect much. I never did. But when I opened the gift bag with my name on it, noticeably smaller than everyone else's, I still felt that sting. Inside was a plastic-wrapped bundle of expired coupons. Local ones, mostly for places that had already gone out of business. A pizza joint that had shut down last spring. A 15% off card for a gym I'd never heard of. A few crumpled receipts at the bottom, as if the bag had been reused from a previous year. I stared at it for a second, wondering if it was some kind of joke. Then I looked up. Sharon was already moving on. "Well, Jack," she said, not even meeting my eyes. "You've never really been one for gifts. You're not exactly an effort kind of person." That sentence. That one stupid sentence. I don't know what happened inside me, but something snapped. Maybe it was the way she said it so casually. Maybe it was the way no one even blinked. Maybe it was just 20 years of swallowing the same bitter pill finally catching up to me. I let out a laugh. A genuine one. Not angry. Not sarcastic. Just empty. I set the gift bag down, stood up, and said, "Yeah, I guess not." Then I went to bed. But the next morning, when they all stumbled downstairs, probably expecting more cinnamon rolls and forced cheer, they were greeted with something else entirely. Silence. My car was gone. My room was empty. And out on the snow-dusted lawn, right where Dad's handmade reindeer decorations used to stand, was a big, bold for sale sign. And I hadn't just walked away from the house. I had walked away from everything. When I tell you they had no idea, I mean it. None of them saw it coming. For the first time in my life, I was the one who orchestrated the surprise, and I didn't do it for applause or recognition. I did it because I had finally reached a point where staying silent, staying the easy kid, was no longer an option. But before I get to that morning and everything that followed, I need to rewind just a bit, because the betrayal didn't start on Christmas. It just reached its boiling point that day. The truth is, it had been simmering for years, long enough to convince me that it wasn't just neglect or favoritism. It was something deeper, something crueler, and it had been carefully disguised as love. Let me back up to the summer before that Christmas. I'd just landed the biggest client of my career. A logistics company was switching over their entire back-end system, and my team, yes, my team of 12 engineers and designers, was brought in to lead the project. It meant long hours, a ton of stress, and a huge payout. When I finally signed the final contract, I told Sharon. Not because I needed a parade, but because I thought she might, I don't know, be happy for me. Maybe even say something maternal like, "I'm proud of you." She didn't. Her exact words were, "Oh, logistics? Like trucks? That doesn't sound very glamorous, but I'm glad you're staying busy." Melanie, meanwhile, had just opened an online boutique selling rebranded dropship jewelry at a 400% markup. Sharon threw a backyard launch party for her, complete with custom cupcakes and a photographer. Ethan had failed the real estate exam for the second time, and Sharon still posted a picture of him with the caption, "Proud of this guy for never giving up on his dreams." I commented with a simple, "Nice job," and Sharon deleted my comment. Said it ruined the aesthetic. But it didn't end there. My cousin Danny was getting married in October, and Sharon insisted the whole family attend. I flew in from Chicago, paid for my own hotel, and even upgraded Sharon's rental car when hers got downgraded last minute. Melanie and Ethan both arrived late, empty-handed, and still got praised for making the effort. I offered to help set up decorations and was handed a broom. At dinner, my name wasn't even on the family seating chart. I ended up sitting next to the DJ, who was the only person all night to ask me what I did for a living. After the wedding, I tried, one last time, to have a real conversation with Sharon. We were alone, sitting on her porch, the sun setting behind the hedges she always kept obsessively trimmed. I asked her, gently, why it always felt like I was the odd one out. Why she never really seemed to care about what I was doing. She sipped her wine and said, "You were always so independent, Jack. You never needed us the way your siblings did. You made it clear you didn't want to be part of all this." All this. As if all this was something sacred and I had voluntarily stepped outside the circle. As if her refusal to include me was my choice. I nodded and said, "Okay." But inside, something shifted. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was done. Then came December. 2 weeks before Christmas, I told Sharon I'd be bringing someone with me to dinner. Her name was Ava. We weren't serious, but we had been seeing each other for a couple of months, and I thought it would be nice to have someone in my corner for once. Sharon's reply? Oh well, that's short notice. Are you sure she'll feel comfortable? We have a vibe we like to keep. Keep in mind, this is the same woman who let Ethan bring a different girl every single Christmas since college. Some of them didn't even stay the night. One time, his date left halfway through dinner to go to a bar and never came back. But my bringing Ava was an inconvenience. I told Sharon not to worry. We'd stay in a hotel. She didn't respond. On Christmas Eve, Ava and I arrived right on time. Melanie and Ethan were already there, as expected. Sharon greeted Ava with a frozen smile and a once-over that made her cheeks flush. During dinner, every question Sharon asked was directed at Melanie or Ethan. Every time Ava tried to speak, Sharon would cut her off or redirect the conversation. Ethan made a joke about my job being something with routers and wires, and Sharon laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. I looked over at Ava. She gave me a tight smile. Later, she whispered, "Is it always like this?" And I said, "Worse." We left early that night and sat in the car outside the hotel for a while. Ava was quiet. I could tell she was trying to find the right words. Eventually, she said, "I think your mom actually resents you." I didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. Christmas morning unfolded the way I already told you. The trip to Paris, the Rolex, the expired coupons, and that single sentence that broke me. Well, you never really put in the effort. Effort. Let me tell you something about effort. I'd been putting in effort since I was 13 years old, helping Dad fix the leaky garage roof because Ethan didn't want to miss his soccer tryout. I put in effort when I skipped prom to work a double shift at the diner so I could save for college. I put in effort every time I sent flowers on Mother's Day, even when I knew she'd post Melanie's brunch instead. I put in effort when I helped Dad build that deck last summer in 90-degree heat while Ethan sat inside playing Xbox. Effort was the only reason I'd made it out of that house with my sanity intact. So after they laughed, after Sharon dismissed me like a ghost, I went to bed, and Ava followed, holding my hand in that quiet way that says everything without a word. We didn't sleep much. Instead, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every slight, every insult, every overlooked moment. I realized something that night. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn a seat at a table that was never set for me. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to flip the table over instead. Before dawn, I got up. Ava stirred, but I told her to go back to sleep. I slipped out of the hotel room and drove back to the house, moving like a ghost through the darkened streets. I parked a block away, so they wouldn't hear. Let myself in with the spare key they still hadn't changed. The living room was a mess of wrapping paper and half-empty wine glasses. I stepped over a fallen stocking and went straight to the closet. Inside was the deed. See, what Sharon didn't know, what no one in that house knew, was that 6 months prior, Dad had quietly transferred the ownership of the house to me. It wasn't out of guilt. It wasn't even out of love. It was out of practicality. He'd fallen behind on a second mortgage. The house was nearly in default. I paid it off. Every cent. In exchange, he signed it over. Sharon never found out, because he knew she'd never allow it. He told her some lie about refinancing. She didn't ask questions. She never did when money was involved. I told him I'd hold on to it until the time was right. And Christmas morning felt like exactly the right time. I called the real estate agent on my drive back to the hotel. I didn't hesitate. I told him to list it immediately. And then I texted my lawyer. That was what they woke up to. The house empty. My room stripped of everything I had ever left behind. A for sale sign on the front lawn, staked deep into the frozen grass like a flag on conquered land. But I wasn't done yet. Because one betrayal was still waiting. One final twist that would make everything crystal clear. And that was when the letter arrived. For the first few days after I left, I didn't hear a word. No texts. No missed calls. No "where are you" messages. Just silence. It was almost funny, in a bitter way. After everything I'd done, after everything I was to that family, my sudden disappearance didn't even register. Or maybe it did, and they just didn't know how to react. Maybe Sharon was too stunned, too proud, too herself to reach out. Or maybe, deep down, she didn't think I was worth chasing. But I knew the silence wouldn't last. I'd lit too big a fire for them to ignore forever. The real storm hit on the 4th day, just after New Year's. I was in my apartment in Chicago, sitting at my desk, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Ava had gone back to her place the night before, needing some time to decompress from the whole holiday circus. We weren't broken up or anything, just paused. That was the word she used. Paused. She said she needed to understand how I handled pain before she could commit to something deeper. I didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. I was sipping my coffee when the first call came in. Melanie. I didn't pick up. Then Ethan. I let it ring. And then Sharon. Voicemail. Jack. This isn't funny. Your brother and sister are devastated. Your father is furious. I don't know what kind of stunt you think you're pulling, but this is not how family behaves. We need to talk. Call me. That was it. No, are you okay? No apology. No effort to understand. Just a demand and an accusation. I blocked the number. By the end of that week, the texts started rolling in from extended family. Cousins. Aunts. People I hadn't spoken to in years. All versions of the same script. Your mom is heartbroken. This is too much, even for you. You can't sell their house, Jack. As if I'd pulled the rug out from under a pair of innocent retirees instead of reclaiming the one damn thing I'd ever been allowed to control. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I moved. I took the boxes I'd been packing and signed a lease on a small brick townhouse not far from the river. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. Big windows. A crooked little staircase. But it was mine, and more importantly, it felt like me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was apologizing just by existing. Those first few weeks were hard, though. I'm not going to pretend I bounced back overnight. I felt like I was floating in limbo, half ashamed, half relieved, all jumbled up into this fog of emotions I didn't know how to sort through. I kept questioning myself. Had I overreacted? Was it really that bad? Was I just too sensitive? But then I'd remember Christmas morning. That bag. That sentence. And how they laughed. That would clear the fog pretty fast. Work helped. I threw myself into the business. Took on more clients. Hired 2 new developers. We moved into a small office space downtown. Just a second-floor walk-up with bad lighting and good energy. The kind of place where you could build something that mattered. And slowly, quietly, things started clicking into place. I'd wake up early. Run by the river. Make myself breakfast. Check my inbox. I bought plants. I hung art. I made my space a home. On weekends, I'd go to this indie bookstore near Logan Square where they hosted live readings, and I started journaling. At first, it felt dumb. I'd sit there with this leather-bound notebook, staring at the page like it owed me something. But then the words started to come. Memories. Thoughts. Little moments I hadn't realized were still clinging to me like vines. Like the time I broke my arm in 6th grade and Sharon made me walk home because she thought I was faking it to skip gym. Or when I got into my first choice college and the only thing she said was, well, don't get cocky. A lot of people drop out. Or the time I offered to pay for Thanksgiving dinner, and she told me, that's sweet, Jack, but we'll let your brother handle it. He needs the confidence boost. I wrote it all down. Every crack, every bruise, every subtle dismissal that had shaped the way I saw myself. And then one day, about 2 months after I left, something strange happened. I was sitting in the office, going over budgets, when my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Sharon Forrester has endorsed you for team management. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand. My mother couldn't be bothered to call me and ask if I was okay, but she could log on to LinkedIn and click a button that said I was good at managing people. I didn't click back. But that night, I wrote about it in my journal. My mother has always given compliments like breadcrumbs in a forest. Just enough to make you think you're not lost, but never enough to get you home. And with that, I turned the page. Literally and metaphorically. March came, and with it, a blizzard of legal documents. Sharon and Greg had finally realized I wasn't bluffing. The house was listed. Offers were coming in. My lawyer, Jessica, a woman I met through a business connection and quickly came to respect, handled most of the logistics. But one day, she called me with a strange tone in her voice. I got a package today, she said. Addressed to you. From your mother. She paused. Do you want it forwarded? I told her yes. It arrived 2 days later. A manila envelope, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Inside was a letter. Not typed. Not neat. Just scrawled ink on torn notebook paper. Sharon's voice in every word. Jack, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but you've made your point. You've embarrassed this family. You've hurt your siblings. Your father doesn't even know what to say to you anymore. You always acted like you were above us, and now I see that was true. But don't forget who raised you. Don't forget who fed you, who gave you a roof, who bought your first suit, who drove you to job interviews before you had a car. Maybe I wasn't perfect, but I did my best. And this is how you repay me? You want to be alone? Fine, be alone. Just don't come back when you realize what you've lost. No apology, no accountability, just one last twist of the knife. I put the letter in a drawer, not to save it, just to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. That was the rock bottom, I think. Not the silence, not the anger, not even the loneliness. It was the confirmation that my mother, the woman I'd spent decades trying to impress, was never going to change. Not for me, not for anyone. But rock bottom has its perks. There's nowhere left to fall. Spring came, and with it, a surprising shift. I started going to therapy. Ava encouraged me, though we still hadn't fully reconnected. She was cautious, but kind. She'd check in now and then, asking how I was doing. I never lied. I told her it was hard, but I was working on it. My therapist, Dr. Martin, was a quiet woman with silver hair and a collection of owl-shaped mugs. She didn't talk much at first, just asked questions that cut deeper than I expected. What did you want your mother to say when you showed her your business plan? What did her approval mean to you? Who are you trying to become, and who are you still trying to prove wrong? I'd sit in that office once a week, peeling back layers I didn't know I had. Shame, guilt, this strange sense that I was only valuable when I was useful. That love had to be earned, over and over again, like some twisted subscription service. But slowly, with each session, the weight started to lift. Not all at once, but piece by piece. I started saying no more often, started prioritizing rest, started setting boundaries. And the more I did, the more I realized how much of my life I'd spent trying to be someone else's idea of good. I stopped doing that. I became my own. By May, the house was sold. I didn't go back to clean it out. I hired a service. I sent Sharon and Greg the final paperwork through the lawyer. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't know them that. But I did keep one thing. A photo. Me, age 9, holding a science fair trophy in front of the fireplace. No one else in the picture. Just me, smiling like I'd finally been seen. I framed it and put it on my new bookshelf, right next to the plant Ava bought me before Christmas. She came over again in June. We talked for hours. This time, there was no pause. There was just us. And there was peace. But the past has a funny way of showing up just when you think you've escaped it. Because a few weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't recognize the voice at first. Jack? It's Dad. He sounded tired. Older. Like something had cracked. I need to talk to you, he said. It's about your sister. And just like that, the past came knocking. I hadn't heard my dad's voice in months. Not since the blurry chaos of Christmas. When I saw unknown caller flash across the screen, I almost let it ring out of habit. But something stopped me. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the soft thrum of closure that had started to form inside me after all those months away. Whatever it was, I picked up. And for the first 5 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, Jack? It's Dad. His voice didn't sound like I remembered it. Greg Forrester was never an expressive man. Stoic, measured, the kind of guy who sat at the dinner table with a fork in one hand and a newspaper in the other. But there was something cracked in his tone now. A hollowness, like the foundation had finally buckled under the weight of years of pretending. I need to talk to you, he said. It's about your sister. I didn't say anything right away. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part, maybe the part that still carried that boyish sliver of hope, stayed on the line. She's in trouble, Jack, he said. Real trouble. I took a breath, leaning against the cool window of my office. What kind of trouble? She took money, he said. From your mother. From me. I blinked. What do you mean took money? He sighed. She told us she was investing it. Said it was part of her boutique expansion. Something about influencers and ad budgets. Your mother gave her full access to the joint account. And now it's all gone. I closed my eyes. Of course. How much? Greg hesitated. Nearly 70,000. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The silence was its own kind of confirmation. She used it to buy followers, fake reviews. Paid some consultant who vanished. The boutique is dead. She didn't even renew the website domain. And now your mother's in a panic because the mortgage for their new condo in Florida just fell through and, well, I think she's starting to realize that the house was the only real safety net we had. So now she wants to talk? I said, now that Melanie turned out to be a bad investment? She doesn't know I'm calling, he said quietly. That surprised me. I'm not asking you to fix this, he added. I just thought you should know. I didn't answer. I could feel my chest tightening. Not with panic. With purpose. There's a moment, when you've been underestimated your entire life, where something inside you clicks. Not out of rage. Not out of spite. But out of clarity. You see the whole board for the first time. You realize how the pieces were always arranged against you. And how, if you move carefully, you can flip the entire game on its head. That moment had arrived. I hung up without promising anything. But I spent the next 2 hours staring at the wall, connecting dots in my mind. The house was gone. The safety net was gone. Melanie had burned through every dollar like it was Monopoly money. And now the cracks were too big to paint over. The family was exposed. And me? I had resources, knowledge, leverage. All I needed was the right moment and a plan. The next day, I called Ava. You busy? I asked. Depends, she said. Are we talking emotionally or logistically? Both, I said. But I need a partner. There was a pause. For what? Something surgical. Ava laughed softly. That's your way of saying revenge, isn't it? I didn't deny it. We met that night at her apartment. She had Thai food waiting and a whiteboard pulled out of her closet like we were planning a heist. Which, in a way, we were. Okay, she said, wiping her hands. Walk me through it. I told her everything. The call from Greg. The money. The boutique collapse. The condo fallout. Sharon's silence. Melanie's mess. I even showed her the letter, the one Sharon had scrawled in anger, still tucked in my drawer like a relic from a dead religion. Ava took it all in, nodding slowly. So what do you want to do? She asked. I want to make them face it, I said. Not just the financial part. The real part. The rot. The favoritism. The manipulation. I want them to feel what it's like to be on the outside for once. I want to take away the illusion. Ava leaned back, folding her arms. That's a lot of therapy undone in one sentence. I smiled. I'm not doing it out of spite. She raised an eyebrow. Well, not just spite, I clarified. We started building the blueprint that night. And it wasn't about hacking bank accounts or sabotaging lives. That wasn't my style. My plan was quieter, smarter, more permanent. Step 1, gather allies. Over the years, I'd stayed in touch with a few cousins and extended relatives who had also felt the sting of Sharon's favoritism. Danny, the one who got married last fall, was first on my list. She'd once confided in me at her reception that Sharon had tried to convince her parents not to let me give a toast because I was too serious and might ruin the vibe. I texted Danny, want to help me expose a family lie? Her reply came 2 minutes later. I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. Step 2, the engagement party. That was the key. Melanie and her newest boyfriend, some dentist named Bryce, were planning an engagement party in early July. Sharon was already bragging about it on social media. Save the date. Hashtag future Mrs. Bright Smile, or some equally obnoxious hashtag. The guest list included distant relatives, high school friends, and a few local influencers Melanie had bribed into showing up. The party was to be held at a rented event space just outside the city. Classy, trendy, way above their current budget, which meant Sharon was probably covering it in the hopes of squeezing sympathy and maybe a bailout out of the relatives who hadn't yet heard about the boutique disaster. Perfect. Step 3, the slideshow. Ava came up with that part. We decided that if we were going to reveal the truth, we'd do it the way Sharon loved best, through a perfectly choreographed, photo-filled, emotionally manipulative presentation. Only ours would be different. We started collecting receipts, screenshots, public bankruptcy filings under Melanie's LLC, Yelp reviews from angry customers, emails forwarded from the consultant Melanie had hired, a ghost email address registered just 2 weeks before the collapse. Danny sent over old family group chats where Sharon praised Melanie for leading the next generation of women in business and dismissed my work as tech stuff for introverts. We compiled it all, organized it into a timeline. Ava handled the design, slick, minimal, devastating. The final slide? A screenshot of the overdraft joint account. Balance, minus $212.37. Captioned, this is what favoritism buys. Step 4, the delivery. I RSVP'd to the engagement party with a +1. Ava. We showed up fashionably late, dressed to kill, carrying nothing but a flash drive and a very calm demeanor. Sharon looked surprised to see me. Melanie looked irritated. Ethan, who had apparently found God or Bitcoin or both in the past few months, looked like he wanted to disappear. Jack, Sharon said, air-kissing me. Didn't think you'd make it. I figured it was time to reconnect, I said. Besides, I brought a little something. I handed her the flash drive. She blinked. What's this? A gift, I said. Ava smiled behind me. It's a surprise. Sharon hesitated. Then, seeing people watching, she smiled too. All right, she said. Let's plug it in. The projector was already set up. The lights were dimmed. The crowd quieted. Sharon walked up to the mic, clinking her champagne glass. Before we continue with the speeches, my firstborn has a little something to share. The word landed with its usual sting. But this time, I smiled. The slideshow began. The first few slides were normal. Childhood photos. Melanie in ballet. Melanie in braces. Melanie holding a fake diploma at her boutique launch party. Then came the shift. Bank transfers. Empty storefronts. Emails. Receipts. Voicemails from creditors. And finally, the overdraft screen. Silence. You could hear a fork drop. Literally. Someone dropped one. Melanie turned red, then white. Sharon's face froze. Greg, standing off to the side, closed his eyes. And me? I just watched. Not with cruelty. With closure. But the night wasn't over. Because just as Sharon lunged toward the laptop to pull the plug, a second folder appeared on screen. Labeled, Inheritance. And that was the part they never saw coming. The moment that second folder popped up, labeled Inheritance, you could feel the entire room seize up like a pulled muscle. It was just one word, tucked in the corner of the screen in Ava's clean white font, but it echoed across the room like thunder. Sharon's hand froze halfway to the laptop, her acrylic nails hovering over the keyboard. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide and sharp, filled with something between panic and rage. Jack, she said, don't you dare. But I already had. Ava, bless her, cool as ever, clicked the folder open from the remote she had tucked in her blazer pocket. The first document was a scanned PDF of the updated will. My grandfather's will. The real one. The one Sharon had quietly tried to rewrite over a decade ago. See, there's a little piece of history I haven't told you. My grandfather, Sharon's father, was one of the few people in my family who saw me. Really saw me. He'd been a quiet, brilliant man with a dry sense of humor and a habit of listening more than he spoke. I used to spend summers helping him in his garage workshop, handing him tools while he taught me how to fix things without rushing. He loved me in a way Sharon never could, with presence, not performance. When he passed away during my senior year of college, the will reading was short, simple, and suspiciously convenient. Sharon told us he'd left the house to her, a small trust to Ethan for growth, and a string of heirlooms to Melanie for future generations. I got a watch. A very old, very broken watch. No bank account. No mention of the summers we spent. Just a silent pat on the back and a ride back to school. But a year ago, while I was visiting an old storage unit where my grandfather used to keep his books and tools, I found something wedged in a manila envelope taped to the underside of an antique desk drawer. It was dated 6 months before his death, notarized and witnessed, a signed amendment to the will. One that named me as the sole beneficiary of his estate, including his house, his stocks, and a sizable amount stashed in a savings account I hadn't known existed. Sharon had, for whatever reason, never found this copy. I could have taken it to court then and there. But I didn't. Not yet. Not until now. Slide by slide, Ava brought it all into view. The hidden amendment, the notarization, the evidence that Sharon had filed a different version just weeks after he died. A version with a signature that, under closer inspection and a hired forensic handwriting analyst, didn't quite match. Not enough to land her in prison, but enough to cast a long, damning shadow. Enough to rattle bones. Enough to humiliate. Gasps rippled through the room. Whispers. Greg went ghost white. Ethan looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Melanie started crying. Sharon, though, she tried to keep it together. Her voice rose, shaking but sharp. That's enough. That document is fake. My father never would've. Would've what? I said, stepping forward. Left something to the only person who didn't treat him like a stepping stone? The only one who didn't ask for money every time we visited. You don't understand how this family works, Jack, she snapped, her her voice rising above the murmurs. You're not part of this. You never were. You never tried. You think a slideshow full of old receipts and dusty PDFs is going to change anything? This family isn't built on paperwork. It's built on loyalty, on history. And you walked out. I didn't walk out, I said, my voice quiet but clear. You pushed me out. And now? Now I'm just choosing to stay out on my own terms. I could have dropped the mic then and there. But I wasn't done. Because here's the thing about Sharon. Her greatest weapon was control. Control over perception, over emotion, over the carefully curated image she showed the world. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the real punishment wasn't the loss of money or property or even respect. It was exposure. Public, undeniable exposure. So I did one last thing. I handed the mic to Ava. She cleared her throat, smiled at the confused and stunned crowd, and said, "For those of you wondering what this was all about, don't worry. We've uploaded the full presentation to a private link. You'll find it in your emails. It'll stay active for 48 hours. And then we left. We didn't wait for the reactions. We didn't stay for the spin. I didn't know them my time, and I certainly didn't know them my presence. I took Ava's hand and walked out the front doors of that overpriced, rented event space into the cool evening air. It felt like stepping out of a heavy coat I'd been wearing my whole life. The fallout came fast. 3 days later, I got a voicemail from Greg. Just Greg. No Sharon. Jack.